Welcome back, everybody. Just Mike here. Today I'm going to kind of talk about pendulums, and on this clock that I've worked on already, which is the New England Clock Company clock. They have such lightweight pendulums that this is kind of easy to work on a pendulum for that clock if you don't have one. Yeah, I think this might work on other clocks too. You just have to have the weight. But let me show you what I'm talking about. So this is a clock that I originally put a battery movement pendulum on. And this clock is supposed to have a 8 3/4 inch length to the pendulum bob. Well, to the pendulum itself. This one here happens to be a 12 inch, and it says it's in Japan. That doesn't make any difference. It's just the idea of having a pendulum bob or a pendulum that will hook up to the movement you have. Anyway, because this one's so long, this clock would run slow. And I did a test, and I know you shouldn't possibly do it. So what I did, like I say, this here's a magnet. And what I did just to try it out, and like I say, it's not normally possibly good because you don't want to magnetize the movement, possibly. But I did this anyway. I took this magnet onto the bob because I was looking at if I had a little bit more weight, what would happen. So I put that on there and I ran it, and the clock actually slowed down, but still not enough for what I needed. So there's an idea of you might need more weight, and if you can kind of figure it out, you might be able to, let's say, hot glue a quarter or 50-cent piece, dollar piece on here to get your weight. Like I say, these New England clocks, they don't weigh anything, and so that's why I decided to do this. But if your clock is let's say a stronger clock, that's where you'd probably end up gluing your coins on here or some kind of a weight that's flat, because you don't want something that sticks way out, because that's going to cause your pendulum to move closer to the wall, more than likely, or further away, and some clocks you can't have that. Anyway, because this is supposed to have an 8 3/4, I decided that possibly on here I need to take the end off, which it looks like it's pretty simple. All I have to do is open this up here, and then I can cut this. So this here from this end to this end would be 8 3/4 inch. Also, even on the New England Clock Company clocks, this threaded part, that's where you'd screw the nut to speed up your clock or slow it down. I found, which is usually in them, a spring that's inside the clock or inside the bob, and if you only have a little bit of adjustment, it's no biggie. But the spring is so tough that once you start pushing on this, that the threads are so small that the nut that goes on here will keep slipping past these, and technically speaking, start stripping out the threads in your nut that goes on there. So what I've decided, for one thing, I'm going to cut some of the spring off because I want more of a play. I think the reason why the spring is on here in the first place is so when you, let's say, trying to slow down your clock and pulling this down, this is going to make the bob push down also. So if this ends up being a problem, if you have to slow your clock down, pull the bob down too to make sure it's touching your nut. Open this up, and see about cutting this to the right length. I'm going to use a screwdriver possibly to get in here to start prying that open until this comes out. So now I'm going to measure 8 3/4. And let's get a pencil here. So right there's 8 3/4. It's actually a little bit more. And so I want this to come up into this area. So I'm going to cut about 1 inch off of this thing. So here I have 8 3/4. Again, I'm going to mark the top of this. So when I get it ready to smash this in, if I move that around, at least I know where I need to have this setting at. It's on there tight. So let's put things back together again. Now I didn't mess with the spring yet, because I figured I'd try this out first. It's got this weird thing on the end of it, and I think that's to make sure it doesn't go through and mess things up maybe. I don't know. As you can see, that spring really pushes. So I think what I'm going to do, with that spring still in there, I'm going to hang this onto my clock and see if just shortening this will work. Like I say, this is for a New England clock, and like I said before, you might need on your clock, if it's not a New England, you might need more weight in here in order to make this work. The idea of using a battery movement pendulum is that it's cheaper to buy these battery movement pendulums than what it is for a normal clock. And like I say, you want to have the right one that's going to hook to the leader that comes down for the pendulum. So I have it set to the time of what my battery movement is. That's on the wall, and this will give me a good idea after a couple hours how close I am. So just to show you in time savers, if you want a better pendulum with the bob, it's only $5. Now this one is $9.50, and so I have a feeling you'd be opening that up the same way I just showed you on the one I've got. If you want, let's call it a cheaper one. And I'm not going to necessarily say it's a cheaper one. This here is a breakaway rod, so they'll have lines every 15/16, I guess. But it comes in a 16-inch length, and depending on the size bob you want, they have a 2-inch for $6, 2 3/4 for $6.50, and 3.5-inch bob for $7. I just soon have, even though the breakaway lines can be on the back against the wall so you won't see them, I think I'd rather come over and look for one that's a little bit closer to what I want. And I'm not, well, I guess I'm advertising for them. This wasn't my first choice of parts places online, but the one I was going to seemed to be out of stock of everything. Time Savers is out of stock of some things also, but normally I could find what I needed. Now I will admit their catalog seems to have a lot more in it compared to online, which I think is quite odd. So more than likely, if you can get a catalog, possibly email them or call them and ask for a catalog if you're planning on doing more than just a $2 item and you never order again. That would almost not be fair per se to get a catalog. But you can go online at Time Savers and you can see what they have there, and if it's nothing that you want, you can actually give them a call and let them know what it is you're looking for, and someone there should be able to help you, and they are very helpful. Well, so far I had to move the pendulum up because it was running a little bit slow, and now it's starting to move a little bit fast. So that tells me I got a little bit of movement on the end of that pendulum. So watching this thing run, I've had to speed it up just a little bit, as in raise the pendulum up just a little bit, and it seems to be keeping really good time now. So I wanted to also mention, because I mentioned it, if you're going to glue any coins to the back of that pendulum for that extra weight, remember you have to get it centered if it's just going to be one, and you have to get them even, whether it's going to be 2/4 or what you're going to do, because otherwise it's going to throw the pendulum or the tick off, and you're going to have to reset that too. Anyway, I'm really happy with these pendulums. That, like I say, I think I've got 3 or 4 of the clocks that have actually have the pendulum missing for some reason, and when I get them from GW, you never know how they're brought in, and the pendulums just get tossed into a different bend or whatever. They're not paying attention. I mean, sad to say, but they're probably minimum wage people there. Anyway, if you appreciate this video and got anything out of it to possibly save yourself some money, or to get yourself a pendulum that's going to work for your clock, give me a thumbs up. I'd appreciate it. Don't forget to subscribe, because it's free. And until next time, God bless.